Well, hey guys, welcome back. It's been about 6 weeks now since our traverse across the state for this special. How have you guys been adjusting in the 6 weeks since? It's still on your minds?
Absolutely, especially as the day gets closer, Casey.
Yeah, exactly.
And Brandon and you guys have been doing all the work, so maybe you'd be better set to answer that.
Oh, Jay, I mean, back during our road trip, so we go to Butte, we went to Lincoln, we went to Helena. It was kind of a trip back through memory lane for you a lot of the time. What was your highlight?
Oh, wow. You kind of put me on. For me, it was getting back to KXLF TV where I worked as the news director, and walking through there, it was a walk down memory lane and getting to stand in my old office and kind of relive the moment when the Ted Kaczynski story became real to me. That was probably the highlight. But it was good to see my cousin Jerry in Lincoln as well. And hanging out with you guys is always fun.
We did have a good time for sure. Brandon, what about you? What are you going to remember most?
Oh man. What I was shocked the most about, honestly, and I know that wasn't the question, but was how many restaurants there were in Lincoln. I was shocked by that, honestly, which was good for us since we were working late and things like that. But honestly, I think the best part about the trip for me was meeting Jerry Burns and hearing his story. And I won't go into it for, I don't want to give anything away, but what an incredible story and just an incredible guy. I mean, and so soft-spoken and humble, you would never know what his role was.
It really is incredible. I remember kind of this whole thing started when I was over at Brandon's house late last year, late in 2020, and we had somehow stumbled upon this conversation about the Unabomber case. And I asked, have you heard Jay's connection to it? Because when I first heard the story from you, Jay, it was stunning. I mean, it's just one of those stories that I basically tell everybody that I can at this point. Not only your connection to MTN with it, but obviously finding out years later about Jerry.
Yeah, my dad was the one I think I mentioned in our interview back in Butte that he was the one saying, hey, did you know your cousin was the guy that actually grabbed Ted Kaczynski? And I was like, no, I need to learn that. He goes, he'd be a good interview. Well, 25 years later, we finally got around to it.
Exactly. Yeah. It turned out he was right. I think one thing that we all were interested in when we got to Lincoln, the town doesn't seem like they want to remember this story in this case at all. There's very little paraphernalia. Most people just kind of go about it like it's not something that really ever happened there. Of course, except for the one Montanan steakhouse, which you two couldn't resist a souvenir.
The Unabomber Stout is the beer of choice there, and I had to get the hat, and it's quite a conversation piece.
Yeah, I mean, well, I had to buy the hoodie because it had the picture of the Unabomber on the hoodie, which I honestly bought it for my wife's brother, who is a brewmaster, and so I knew he would love it. And honestly, when I gave it to him, he's probably worn that thing like 8 times, which was really funny. But yeah, I mean, I went back a couple weeks ago to get some more video and to do another interview, and I asked a couple more people just about the Unabomber and the association. And it's funny because I think a lot of young people don't really know much about the Unabomber, but then you've got the other kind of sort of population who doesn't want to remember it or doesn't want to be associated. And then you've got a small like mix of people who are like, we should do like Unabomber days, like, have something that brings tourism into town and things like that. And so it's an interesting mix of what people want, what they don't want. I don't know. I'm fascinated by it. And somebody mentioned doing Unabomber days on 4th of July. I don't know. Is it too soon?
It's kind of a fine line to walk there for the community. And actually, this was a tragic story. He killed how many people, Casey?
3 people.
3 people and injured over
3 injuries, I believe.
Yeah. And so to make light of it, it doesn't seem right. But on the other hand, it is part of Lincoln's history. To me, one of the funniest things was when we were on the road outside the Unabomber road, I'll call it, where his cabin was. And this gentleman pulled up in the big truck and asked what we were doing. And I went over and said, we're doing a story about the 25th anniversary of the Unabomber arrest. And he told me, oh, well, he said, well, when I found out the Unabomber was from Lincoln, I thought of 25 people before I thought of Kaczynski. And I thought, should have had the camera rolling for that.
And that's been a story we've heard from several people who said, there were a lot of people who just isolated themselves in those thick woods around Lincoln and who really didn't bother anybody at the time. And so a lot of people said, there's quite a few people who fit the profile of that who lived around here. It's a common story we've really heard. Also in the special, we heard from James Rafferty and Shannon Everts, two other MTN legends, I guess, back in the day. And I think the one super interesting thing, Jay, is that they were all at different stations. James was in Missoula. Shannon was in Great Falls. You were in Butte. But it really just still seemed like you guys were all part of the same team. And that's something that really helped on this story.
Absolutely. And, I had not really heard James's personal story. I knew he was involved in video with the video and getting when they took Kaczynski into the federal court in Helena. And I've done a lot of specials and a lot of work with Shannon Everton. Had never really heard her story of getting the video of the cabin leaving Malmstrom Air Base. So it was I was learning along with everyone else.
And I know, Brandon, one of your favorite stories that didn't make it into the special.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's on the cutting room floor right here next to me. But James Rafferty, he's actually a living legend because he's still like an integral part of what we do at MTN. And the interesting thing is that, when you look back on this story, and there's so many little stories in here that we couldn't get in, the thing that stuck out to me the most that James Rafferty said was that he knew where he was in the time because he had gone home to watch General Hospital. So he knew exactly where he was and what time it was. And so, man, I would have liked to have put that in the piece, but it just didn't seem to fit.
We had to give him a little flack for that. As a CBS affiliated group of stations, he was watching ABC at the time and heard the news from Peter Jennings instead of Dan Rather, who had it a little bit earlier because, he just couldn't miss General Hospital that day.
I get it, man. That was way before Netflix. That was when daytime television was at its peak, honestly.
Exactly. Well, I know, speaking for myself, I had a blast doing this story with you two. It's something we're going to remember for a long time, I can imagine.
Yeah, I've already alerted my other cousins of when it's airing, and I'm going to send them the link so they can watch as well. So in our family, it'll be a big night on Saturday.
Yeah, I honestly, I want to go back. I mean, I really enjoyed meeting everybody in Lincoln. The people in Lincoln are great. They're very accepting. And they mentioned that multiple times. And you'll see in this story, archive footage really drove this story. And we got very lucky with finding a lot of archive and old video and sound bites from people. And Jay, you'd be interested to know one of the people who speaks, she actually says, I would have thought of a lot of other people before I thought of Ted Kaczynski as the Unabomber. So we didn't get the soundbite from the guy that you talked to, but we actually have it from 25 years ago. and it's fascinating. And even people then said, this is a very accepting town. You come as you are. I mean, people walk around with beards all the time and nobody thinks anything of it. So I enjoyed our time there, and I think Lincoln gets a bad rap. I mean, I've mentioned Lincoln to people before, and they're like, "Oh man, Lincoln, this and that," and that's really not the case. It was awesome. I loved going there, and of course, the weather is. You talk about weather changing in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, it changed our shooting schedule. We were going to go a week earlier in February, and it was during our extreme cold snap when we were checking the weather in Lincoln, and it was, 15, 20 below every day that we were going to be there. And I think Jay was the first one to make the call that said, we probably should push it back a week and maybe not go there then. It was probably the right idea.
And I remember thinking to myself, gosh darn it, I just want to go. I just want to get there. Let's just do this, And then as we were there the following week, I was like, man, it's a good thing we didn't go last week when it was -30.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Lincoln is still attracting people that want to get out of the way. Just while you were editing this, there was an incident where the guy in a cabin outside of Lincoln was held up and had a standoff with officials there, and they closed the road in both directions. What was that? Was a couple of weeks after we left. So
right,
maybe there's still some characters in the woods around Lincoln. Let's hope we don't run across any of them, at least afoul of them.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, if you want to get away, get to Lincoln.
Get to Lincoln. You can hide. We promise. Yep. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate that. And well, until the next time.
Until the next time.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks, Brandon. It's been fun.
Thank you guys.